everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. We are really excited today to be here to talk more about Disney Plus. This is our second episode that we have done where we're trying to profile hidden gems that aren't as famous on Disney Plus in the curated or new section, depending on what you pick, and have a good discussion about it and try to get you to go pick some of these lesser known films. So I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and my friend Ryan Cam is here.
Hey Rachel, thank you so much for having me here again. It's good to hear your voice and good to be talking about Disney Plus because it just seems like everything has been put on hold for the foreseeable future. Like all the movie theaters are closed, and I'm totally not going through withdrawals right now.
Right.
Why do you ask?
Yeah. I mean, this is totally normal. We're completely used to it.
We are all the dog in the room that is on fire. Like, this is fine.
Yeah, right.
That's all of us right now.
Yeah. So have you had a chance to watch anything on Disney Plus in the last week?
I was actually watching African Cats with my mom, which we talked about briefly in the last episode when you were talking about chimpanzee. But since I've really had a lot of time on my hands, I was able to touch on a lot of stuff that I grew up watching and a couple of ones that I remember watching a long time ago, but was brushing up on.
Cool. Yeah. Did you have a standout of those ones you were watching?
Well, my first one may be my favorite of the group that I watched. I hinted in the last episode that I was going to talk about a sports movie because you brought up The Queen of Catway. Well, the sports movie that I was alluding to was The Greatest Game Ever Played. This was released in 2004. It was directed by Bill Paxton. Yes, the Bill Paxton that you're thinking of, the guy that was Hudson in Aliens and was in Frailty, and he had a long and lengthy career and recently passed away. May he rest in peace.
So this is one of your 5 that we're going to talk about today. Cool. Very good. I did watch the Fun and Fancy Free, which is going to be the Talking Disney episode for this week with my friend Stanford. It's going to be on there, but then I also for a podcast I finished watching the High School Musical, the series.
That series is so weird.
It is really weird, but I think that it's really well cast. They did a great job with.
I really liked the singing.
Yeah, they did. The singing is good. The casting is really good. So it's pretty charming. I actually enjoyed it. But the conflict and some of the writing could be better. So
I will give you that. It's just every time I was watching the series, I had to take myself out of it and be like, wait a minute. So High School Musical was a real thing. And so if that's the case, did like Troy and Gabriella end up getting married like they were alluding to? I just fell down a High School Musical fan fiction rabbit hole.
It's not a real thing in the sense of that the characters are real from High School Musical. It's just that in this world, High School Musical was like, in this world, Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens and all that. It's basically like just like our world, except for they have this group that also goes to East High, like the characters in the movie, and they are, which is a real thing, and it's pretty close to my house, about 30 minutes away from where I live is East High, and then they're putting on the musical, but there's some weird things about it because like the musical isn't the same as the actual musical. Like, for instance, Sharpay isn't really hardly a character at all, which is weird.
She's barely mentioned.
Yeah. It's strange, and they like kind of morph her. They swap gender swap her, which would be fine, but they kind of eliminate her in the process. It's very weird. And there's other just weird choices that it's like it's sort of like this quasi version of High School Musical is actually a musical, but it's not like especially in the finale or what in the one of the later episodes, they have a cameo from the guy who played Ryan. I can think of his name all of a sudden. But
Lucas Gabriel.
yeah, Louis Gabriel. He and yet in the actual musical that they're putting on, he's kind of eliminated. Like he's like he doesn't even have a named actor who's playing him. Like it's just like he's basically eliminated from the story, and yet he has a cameo. Like if I was gonna have
People always talk about justice for Han in the Fast
Yeah.
and Furious movies. We need like justice
Like,
for Ryan.
well, especially if you're gonna have that actor have a fairly extensive cameo with a song, you'd think that you would plan out your story so that Ryan in the musical is a character. Like it's so weird, but nevertheless,
One more note before we move on. I was just thinking about it, and High School, the musical, the series, say that 5 times fast, is kind of like if The Breakfast Club, the movie The Breakfast Club, actually happened, someone turned it into a stage play, and it was being hosted at the same school where it took place.
Yeah.
And they turned a TV series into it.
Yeah, it would be like it would be like a group that went to the high school from The Breakfast Club putting on a play that's kind of like The Breakfast Club. And so it's weird, but they, like I said, the music is pretty good, especially a song called Wondering, a great song. And the casting is very good, and I do really appreciate that they actually cast teenagers. It's not like Glee where they all look like they're 35. This
Not like the original Spider-Man where
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire is clearly in his early 30s.
Right. Yeah, these are actual teenagers, which I very much appreciate. And so anyway, if you're interested to know more about High School Musical, the series, check out On Hallmarkie's podcast, because we're going to post that we've already posted the first half, episodes 1 through 5 discussion. And now on Wednesday, we're going to post the second half, episodes 6 through 10 on the podcast. So I'll put a link down in the description. You can check that out. But anyways, that's some of the things I've been watching on Disney Plus. But so we're going to talk about our hidden gems that you should check out. And so you already said your first one. So the greatest game ever played.
That is correct.
Yeah, I actually have never seen this one, so that's really interesting to me.
Oh well, it's in my opinion one of the better sports movies that Disney put out from like the late '90s all the way up to like the early to mid 2000s into the 2010s. This movie's always had a very special meaning for me because I'm actually a golfer. I still golf fairly frequently to this day. And so I knew a little bit about the story of Francis Ouimet and the 1918 U.S. Open, but in movie form, it was just brought to life. And the greatest game ever played is about an amateur golfer named Francis Ouimet, who was a caddy at the Brookline Country Club where the 1918 U.S. Open was to be played. And at that golf tournament, he defeated what was considered to be the greatest golfer in the world, Harry Vardon, basically the Tiger Woods of his day, and he became the first amateur to win the U.S. Open Championship. And this movie's really fascinating for a number of reasons. I love it so much. I could do an entire video about the character arc between Francis and his dad, but I'll save that for another time. But what makes the movie interesting is you see the dynamic between the amateurs and the professionals, because in the movie, golf is seen as a gentleman's game, meaning that you had to be of a certain amount of wealth in order to participate, and the rest were just seen as second-class citizens or maybe even worse. So the idea
Right.
of Francis Ouimet, this amateur and this caddy, even playing in the tournament was just a foreign concept to most of them. And he was clearly underestimated, like to the nth degree. But the one person who took him seriously was Harry Vardon, the guy that ended up losing to Francis. So it's a fantastic movie with a great story and a great message. It's oddly pretty funny, mostly coming from the character Ted Ray, but you'll just have to see the movie to understand what I mean by that. So just to put the period at the end of the sentence, the greatest game ever played, super underrated, especially in terms of the sports movies that Disney were putting out around that time, and go check it out.
Yeah, I definitely will. Because I have one on my list. I really like these sports movies from Disney. I mean, I'm a big fan I'm probably more of a fan of sports movies than I am a fan of sports. Not maybe, I definitely am.
Me
And
too.
I love movies that just make you cheer, make you feel good. It doesn't matter to me if it's predictable because that's the formula of the genre and I like the genre. And I mean, it can be done badly, but for the most part, I'm a pretty easy sell when it
So
comes to these sort of underdog sports movies. You can cheer, make you feel good about life. And so I'll definitely check that one out.
yeah, one of the, if not the best one, is Miracle, which was directed by
Yeah,
Gavin
so good.
O'Connor, who has gone on to direct Warrior and The
Yeah.
Way Back.
And I think because he cast hockey players, not actors, for the team. That was the priority, is to get hockey players over getting professional actors. And I think they actually do a really good job. They're certainly serviceable at least, but I think they do a good job. And of course, Kurt Russell is great, and that's an example of everybody knows the ending of that movie. Everyone. So how do you make it interesting? Uh, you make the journey interesting, not the
Not the
ending.
destination.
Yeah. So you make the journey of how they how they got there, and it's really interesting actually. In 30 for 30 from ESPN, they did a documentary about the Russian team and Miracle of Ice and like what the fallout was for them, and it was fascinating. If you want to watch something really interesting,
To counter that, I'll definitely check that out. But to counter that, HBO did a documentary in 2001 called "Do You Believe in Miracles?" The story of the 1980 U.S. hockey team, and
that
it
sounds good.
did a pretty damn good job of
Yeah.
outlining what was going on in the U.S. at the time and the world at the time, because after we had lost Vietnam, the Iranian hostage crisis had just happened like 3 weeks or so
Yeah.
before the Olympics. So our morale was at like in the basement. But
Right.
when the US defeated the almighty Soviets, who were seen as like, the
Yeah.
final boss of a video game, like they were unstoppable. When they beat them, it was like, we're on top of the world. We can do anything. And so
Yeah. So definitely that's good picks. So my first one that I wanted to talk about is the movie Tuck Everlasting, and this is based on a book, and it was released in 2002. And it's really interesting to me because it stars Alexis Bledel, and of course most people think of her as Rory Gilmore, and her role here is totally different than Rory, because Rory is that this. If you watch, do you ever watch the Gilmore Girls?
I've seen select episodes,
Mm.
but I know enough to get by.
The dialogue is very fast in that show, and the scripts were like triple the length of a typical show, so they go really fast, and she's just way more sort of uh, like confident and just kind of a quick with a response kind of a character in Gilmore Girls. But in this movie, she's way more of a classical character. She's very even just in her stylings, in her beauty, she's way more sort of waifish and just kind of classically beautiful in a that you'd think of with like a Browning poem or like something from the late 19th century kind of a thing, and just different than the sort of modern, quick talking girl that she is in Gilmore Girls. And she's gorgeous, beautiful, and she meets this family of immortals, basically, that they can kind of live forever, where they through the through this magic, basically, of where they live. And she falls for the lead guy, in the young man of the family, and she then has to decide, what do I do? Do I stay with him and live forever, or is that a happy life, or do I actually live my life? Would I want to stay the same age for all time? It's kind of similar to Brigadoon in that way. You've seen Brigadoon, and Jonathan Jackson plays Jesse in it, and it has a great cast. Ben Kingsley is in it. William Hurt is in it. Sissy Spacek,
Victor Garber.
Yes. And I don't know, I really enjoy it. I think it's really good. And I've always said for a long time that when they cast Kristen Stewart as Bella in Twilight, I thought that was such a mistake, because I think they should have cast Alexis Bledel. If you look at her in this movie, not as Gilmore Girls, but as this movie, I think she fits the part of Bella so much better than Kristen Stewart, because she's just, I don't know. I've always felt like they should have gotten somebody that's more classically beautiful and more of a kind of ephemeral type of character and actress, and I think that she would have been way better. And I love Kristen Stewart now as an actress, and she's done many really wonderful films, but I just think for that role, I think she was very miscast as Bella.
Yeah, I was going to say casting Kristen Stewart in Twilight was a mistake, not because it's Kristen Stewart, because I think she's honestly grown as an actress and she's become really good, but it's just those movies were god awful.
Yeah, and I think the casting on all the parts, I think it was all wrong. I wouldn't have, and it was just, and the movies are so simple, and so if you have the casting wrong, it's just kind of death to it. The franchise. I mean, I liked the first two books. I genuinely did, but I never liked any of the movies because I just thought the casting was completely off. I didn't like Robert Pattinson as Edward at all. I thought he was totally wrong. I would have cast somebody kind of like a young Tom Welling. I think would have fit way better. But anyway, that's neither here or there. But I don't know. I just think that she's just so beautiful in this movie. There's a softness, there's an elegance to her that really is great, and their chemistry is great. And I think it just makes for a really good little romance if you like. It's a little bit bittersweet, but I think it's good. I really enjoy it. So anyway, if you're curious to see a different kind of role for Alexis Bledel than Rory, check it out.
Yeah, one more point before we move on. When New Moon came out and they were having the whole Team Edward and Team Jacob thing, that was just everywhere in my school, and I wanted to ram my head into my locker because it was everywhere and it wouldn't go away, and I just wanted it to get lost. So that's when the third book lost me with the whole love triangle thing. I was just like, ugh. But I did like the first two books, but what are you going to do? So what is your next film that you want to talk about? My next choice, we're going back to the early 50s to talk about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This starred Kirk Douglas, James Mason, and Peter Lorre, among others. And this was honestly one of the more technologically advanced movies of the day. It won an Academy Award for Best Art and for Best Special Effects. even though in my opinion they really haven't aged all that well, especially the stuff with the giant squid. But it was the early 50s. It was mind-blowing back then, but
Uh-huh.
it only because CGI now is prevalent literally everywhere. Uh, there it is. But the movie is based on the book by Jules Verne, and I actually read the book and I loved it, and I loved this movie. It's the story about a scientist, uh, a, a shipmate, and the scientist's assistant who are captured by Captain Nemo, who is this mysterious, sailor who basically has the idea that he wants to destroy the progress of humanity. And the movie does a great job of asking several moral questions, like as far as more advanced as we get, we lose touch with the natural world. However, should we progress and should we not? It's where does the line go about it? I like that. I like the spirit of that. Oh, and before I toss it to you, Rachel, I was just reading this earlier, and I just thought it would be funny. I should warn everybody because this movie does contain some stuff that may not be sensitive to our current climate. It contains depictions of smoking, specifically of the seaweed variety. So if you are
Ah.
sensitive to tobacco and smoking, then this will definitely trigger you. Because apparently showing it in 13 Reasons Why is all right, but saying so in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is crossing the line. But I digress.
Right.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is very entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot of fun. I haven't seen it for a while, but it's a classic story. It's an adventure, and I think it's got a great cast. And yeah, I'll have to watch it again. It's like I said, it's been a while, but I also kind of remember it fondly because the old before they changed it to Nemo's uh submarine ride, the old submarine ride at Disneyland used to be 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and there was you got on your little Nautilus and went in, and so that's also very memorable to me, to get to go on that ride at Disneyland. So, all right, very good. My next choice is a comedy. This was under 20th Century Fox, but it's called Dan in Real Life. I guess it's the new thing on the show that I always have to recommend a Steve Carell movie. I think that's clear every week. But I love Dan in Real Life. This is a romantic comedy about or family comedy, depending how you look at it, about this widower. He has these daughters, and he's going back to visit his family, and while he's there, he meets a woman played by Juliette Binoche. They have this moment, but it turns out his brother, played by Dane Cook, is dating said woman. So things get pretty complicated, and it gets more complicated by the fact that he writes a advice slash dating slash life whatever advice column. And so the fact he's telling other people how to live their lives when he doesn't know how to live his life is is ironic, I guess. And the girls, I think there's 3 girls, but they're really funny, especially the oldest girl is dating this boy, and she's really upset with her dad, and because she has to go on this vacation or whatever, and she's like, "You are a thief of love." It's funny. And I feel like the family feels very real to me. John Mahoney, Diane Wiest are great as his parents. You have Amy Ryan, like I said, Dane Cook's actually decent in this. The only thing I would knock it on is that I don't think that him and Juliette Binoche have that good of chemistry. So that hurts it a little bit. But nevertheless, I think the script is really solid, and I really like the family feel of the movie. And so I enjoy it, and I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check this out, especially considering that this was released in 2007 and The Office had just started up 2 years earlier. So this
Hmm.
is Steve Carell in his like The Office prime. This
Yeah,
was when I believe like the first 3 or 4 seasons of The Office are like the top tier Office.
yeah,
Like I love all of The Office, but I recognize that the later seasons were a definite dip in quality from the first few.
yeah.
So I'll definitely have to check out Dan in real life.
I also love the soundtrack. It's really, really, really good. So that's also fun. So what's your next choice?
So my next one is The Chronicles of Narnia: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This was from 2005, and it's based on the legendary book by C.S. Lewis. I remember reading this book in middle school because I think it was a law around the early to mid 2000s that you had to read the book and then watch the movie afterwards as part of an high school or middle school English curriculum. But you could pick better books slash movies to read because I love both the book and this movie. I think the best way I can describe it is like Lord of the Rings, but maybe for like younger kids. There's not as much lore, and it's a lot easier to follow. But the movie itself is fantastic. It's got Tilda Swinton in there as the White Witch. She is evil as hell in this movie. James McAvoy plays, I believe it's a nymph. He has, or it, he's either a nymph or a centaur, or he, he's
Yeah.
he's a faun. He is a faun. It took me a second, but he is a faun. And then, of course, Liam Neeson in one of the best casting choices ever as Aslan the lion with his deep booming voice, and it's just fantastic. Really, I was thinking about this movie a lot, and really, the kids in the movie, played by Georgie Henley, Skander Keynes, William Moseley, and Anna Popplewell, really didn't go on to do all that much after this movie. Some of them stayed behind to do uh, Prince Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader, but they never really did any movies after this, which I think is pretty sad because I liked them in this movie. I thought they were all really good. But The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is really a special movie. It blends fantasy and magic and beautiful effects with a great score and a really, really good action scene at the very end. It's great stuff all around.
Yeah, I think that it is a really strong film. And I actually have been kind of a defender of Prince Caspian. I have long said that I think that that group of child actors is stronger than the Harry Potter kids.
Wow,
Shocking, I
that's a
know,
hot take.
but I do. I think that I don't know. I just think they're better actors right out of the gate as far as your child actors. They were really good, and I think that it's just a beautiful story that has a lot of layers to it. This first one in particular, obviously there's a Christ metaphor with Aslan, and I guess I mean I'm Christian, so that worked for me, and I thought it was moving and lovely, and I think that Tilda Swinton is so fun. She does the villain so well, and
Yeah, she's honestly one of my favorite actresses.
yeah,
When the whole Doctor Strange thing with casting the Ancient One as a white woman rather than as a Tibetan man, I was sitting there like, I'm not even mad. She's being played by Tilda Swinton. I don't care.
right, yeah,
like you could do worse than Tilda Swinton.
right, yeah. No, I thought the same thing. I really did. She's great, and yeah, I think it's a really really good movie. I mean, I think people that I think that people a lot of people just haven't really thought about it because the subsequent movies weren't as good.
I like
Yeah,
Prince Caspian. Really, the
yeah,
Voyage of the Dawn Treader was the one that was kind of so-so, but even
yeah,
the Voyage of the Dawn Treader had one of my favorite entrances into Narnia, where it's the train passing by, and then and then Lucy and the other one, I'm forgetting
Yeah.
his name.
I
They
mean,
enter in through there.
yeah. I mean, maybe part of the problem is just there's just wasn't as many of the movies made as Harry Potter, and that's why it didn't have as lasting an impact. I don't know,
There were
but
7 books made. It was
yeah.
Lion the Witch of the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair.
And
I'm forgetting the rest.
maybe they'll make more of those. I don't know. I do think that in one hand, I think most people have seen this movie, but I think that people have kind of forgotten about it. So I think it's good on your list as a hidden gem. But so my next choice, I said I had a sports movie on my list. I do. And my next choice is called Glory Road. And this was from 2006.
Oh, I
And
love this movie to pieces.
yeah, so this is about in 1966. The coach, this is in Texas, Texas Western. They led the first all-black starting lineup for a college basketball team into the national championships, and this stars Josh Lucas, who I have always really liked. I think it's kind of a shame that he's been kind of relegated to sort of a lot of times playing the jerk, like in Ford v Ferrari, movies like that.
For a while he just disappeared off the face of the planet, and then he
Yeah,
showed up in Ford v Ferrari. I'm like, holy crap, Josh Lucas, where have you been?
I think he's done a lot of like television work, but his career hasn't taken off the way that I think it maybe deserves. He's a really charismatic actor, and I think he's very handsome. And he was on Breakthrough last. He was in Breakthrough last year, which I actually thought was a pretty solid faith-based film.
Yeah, I
One of
really
the better
liked it.
ones.
I never
Yeah,
saw it in the theater, but I saw it at home, and I did enjoy it.
yeah, and that will probably end up on Disney Plus one of these days.
Eventually, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
because it is owned by Disney now. But I love Sweet Home Alabama. He's so good in that. And anyway, he plays the coach. He's great, really good in it, and it has just a really strong supporting cast. And it's a moving story. It does have some traumatic events that you'd have to talk to your kids about, but I
Oh
don't think
yeah,
it's much worse than Remember the Titans. I think they're about the same level as far as depicting racism and that kind of thing. But I think it's a movie you could watch with your family and have a really good discussion about racism and why people behave that way, and what we can do to not behave that way, and all of those kinds of things. So I
I
think it's
distinctly
a good choice.
remember I distinctly remember seeing this movie in theaters, and I went with my mom and dad, and the scene where I believe it was Bobby Joe Hill goes into the bathroom and he's
Yeah.
attacked by the 2 white guys. My mom had to like cover my eyes because I was so
Yeah.
young that she was like, "You're not seeing that," and I was like trying to go around because I wanted to see what was happening,
Yeah.
and to the poor guy. And but yeah, I love this movie to death. I remember watching it in theaters, and I've seen it several times over since then. And it's a really inspiring story about
Yeah.
how and what I've always found funny is that the coach at the end, his name is Adolf Rupp, and
Oh yeah.
there's a lot to unpack there that's well beyond my pay grade, but but he's played by John Voight, and I tend to enjoy John Voight in anything that he's in. So
Yeah, I mean, John Voight, he has a he's definitely taken some paychecks. I mean, particularly the Baby Genius and Bratz. He's definitely
oh
taken some
wait, he
paychecks.
was he was in Bratz.
Yeah, he was.
Oh
But
dear Lord.
I know. But yeah, I mean, he's an Oscar-winning actor. So I I did notice that if you watch this on Vudu, if you have Vudu, it is available with Family Play, which is kind of their you can watch it, and it helps you skip past maybe the more violent parts, or language, or it's basically like your cleaned up airplane version of the movie. So if that's something that you want, it's not on Disney Plus, I guess, that way. But anyway, it is available on Vudu with the family play. So what's your next choice?
So my next choice is from Disney Channel back in the mid 2000s. It is Jump In. I remember watching this when it debuted because it was teamed up with a show with the That's the Raven spin-off show called Cory in the House that premiered directly afterwards. I remember I remember all of that. I even remember the commercial bumpers, but that's a side road. Jump In starred Corbin Blue, who was fresh off of playing Chad in High School Musical and would subsequently be him in 2 and 3. It also stars Keke Palmer, who would go on to have a relative success in later on in movies. And it's about a teenager named Izzy Daniels, who is a really good boxer, but then discovers a love for double dutch and jumping rope. And he volunteers to be a part of his neighbor Mary's, played by Keke Palmer's, double dutch team. But he gets like, but the boxers are all like, "Oh, you're double dutch, like that's weak sauce." But he still does it anyway, and it's a really good movie. It has a nice message. It's got some really well filmed like jump rope sequences in there with a lot of slow-mo and quick cuts, but in the best way possible. It's funny on some occasions. For a Disney Channel movie, it's one of the better ones.
Cool. I'm so far behind when it comes to the Disney Channel original movies. The only ones that I've seen quite a few of are I would say like the more scary ones, because I have my Disney Scares series that I've been doing now for 5 years. Right. So I have seen a bunch of those, but I have so many holes in my Disney Channel movie series watching. So that's something that I could improve. I've heard that one and I heard it's good.
Yeah, I was such a Disney Channel fan back in the day that I remember watching Jump In the premiere night, and then I watched the encore the following week, but it had like the gimmick of having like little notes on the bottom, be like, "This was filmed in an alley in Brooklyn." And I was like, "You bet I'm watching that."
That's cool. I love stuff like that. All right. Well, my next choice is called Blackbeard's Ghost. This is from 1968, and it's a comedy. And basically, there's this track coach, and played by Dean Jones, who was a big Disney guy in the late 60s. Was
he the guy from The Love Bug?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I see his face now.
Yeah, and he was in the I think in the Merlin Jones movies. Anyway, he was in a bunch of movies, but he's in this, and he plays this track coach, and he decides to stay at this inn called the Blackbeard's Inn, and he finds this through various shenanigans. He ends up kind of unleashing this ghost. This pirate ghost, Blackbeard, and that only he can see. And he's played by Peter Ustinov, and he is hilarious and ridiculous, and it's really pretty funny. And and so yeah, I think if you like sort of Disney live action comedies that are a little slapsticky and silly and funny, I think you'll enjoy this one. I think it's a good one that most people haven't
when
seen.
The Olympics complain about steroids, it wasn't steroids. It was Blackbeard's ghost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so people should see it. It's funny. I think they'll like it, especially the final big scene at the track. There's a big track meet, and it's very silly and funny, I think. So,
have you by chance seen any of the Kurt Russell Disney movies, like The Strongest Man in the World? And
yes, I haven't seen all of them, but like the what is it? The kid who invented the computer one. The
computer wore tennis shoes.
Yeah. I've seen that one. I've seen a number of them, and this one is just really. This one's a lot of fun. People should check it out.
I do bring it up because in The Strongest Man in the World, one of the main bad guys is played by Cesar Romero, who was the Joker on the Adam West
Ah,
Batman
yeah,
TV show.
right. Yeah. So, you haven't seen this one, have you? Blackbeard's Ghost?
No, I honestly had no idea
Yeah.
that this movie existed until you sent me
Yeah.
your list when we were planning this
Yeah.
show out. I was like, I have never heard of this one, but I
Yeah.
was looking at this and I was like, you know what? I may have to look into this.
Yeah. And I'll put a link. I have reviewed this one for Disney Scares Month, and it was pretty funny. So I have a review of it on my channel.
Well, I'll be sure to take a look.
So what do you have next?
My final choice is Tron Legacy from 2010. Now, I will say that when people complain about some of the CGI and some of the story elements, they are largely correct. I'm not going to sit out there and say, like, Tron Legacy is a misunderstood masterpiece. It is by no means a masterpiece. However, I've always liked the movie because my dad and I saw it on Christmas Eve in 2010, and we both loved it. And then I remember just going back to it, and I remember loving the visual effects. The grid is fully realized, and it looks far better than the original Tron that came out in the 80s. They were severely limited by the technology of the time, but when you step onto the grid, it's like this beautiful world of blacks and blues and golds on some occasions if you're fighting the programs. But the story, I will admit, does get a tad confusing, especially when you bring Clue into the mix. And Jeff Bridges' CGI, like younger self, does stand out quite a bit for the wrong reasons. But minus all of that, I still have enjoyed this movie. It's got jaw-dropping like light cycle battles and the disc war scene. Just I love that scene every time, and it's got one of my favorite Disney scores of all time from Daft Punk.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one to check out.
I really need to watch this one because I love the original Tron so much. I just think I don't know, I love everything. I think it's such a cool, unique, interesting, engaging movie. And so I really, at first I was kind of hesitant because I'm like, I I really love the original so much, but so that kind of made me hesitant to watch the sequel. But I've heard just enough great things. I really need to watch it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that people tend to be like, I don't know, but when they watch it, it's like, wow, this was surprisingly great.
Yeah. Well, my last choice is actually a television show. And I haven't watched that many of the Disney television shows, but I think one of their best shows that they ever had is called Good Luck Charlie. And it's a really well written, well done show about this family that the kids are older and they find out the mother's pregnant, and so they're gonna have this little baby sibling. And I definitely connected with it, even though it's obviously for children, but I really connected with it because that was my life experience. My mom had a baby when I was 10, when I was 16, and when I was 18. And and so seeing these kind of teenagers adjusting to life with a new baby, even though I was, I think it started in 2010, so I was, uh, I was older. So the show was not made for me, but I definitely related to the situation of the story. And I thought that the casting was really charming and they felt like a family to me. I felt like it was well written. And I don't know, I just think it's a charming show that people should check out. Has nice messages, and the humor I think is better than a lot of the other Disney shows. That's at least that I've seen a few episodes of different shows where it's seems like a lot more over the top, and this felt like normal sort of family comedy to me, and so I just really enjoy it, and people should check it out.
Yeah, I remember watching watching the reruns of this show a lot on Disney Channel. I even remember the main star. I want to say her name is Bridget something.
Yeah, Bridget
I
Mendler.
stink with names, so it's Bridget. I know something or other.
Right.
I'll think of it at like 10 o'clock
Bridget
at night and be
Mendler
like,
is her name.
"Thank you, Bridget
Yeah.
Mendler." I remember she was on those Disney bumpers where they had the magic wand. They'd be like, "Hi, I'm
Right. Yeah.
from name of show, and you're watching Disney Channel," and they made the mouse ears with the magic wand. Like that's when you know you've made it and you're sticking around a while when you're on one of
Yeah.
those bumpers. But I loved this show to death, and I remember there was this one episode where the mom was doing this interview, and she was like sensationalizing the birth and all of that, and then Charlie, and then Teddy just snaps, and she was
Yeah.
like, "Oh well, you forgot to ask me about how I feel about and this, that, and the other thing," and it was kind of rough, but then it was one of those bonding moments between a mother and a daughter
Yeah.
that I was just like, "Oh well, that was nice," It was like it was one of those things where something had to be torn down, but something new was built right back in its place.
Right. Yeah, it's a really well-written show that feels like the characters are actually kind of real. This feels like a family to me. And I think a lot of the other Disney Channel shows are a lot sillier. And that has its place, and that's fine. But I don't know, I just think this show is the best thing I've ever seen from Disney Channel as far as writing, and I just connected with it because, like I said, my mom had had babies when I was in high school and growing up and stuff, so I know what that's like, and so I think people should give it a shot. It's a well done show.
Indeed.
So there we go. We did it. Got our 5 more recommendations. Let us know what you think of any of these films that we've talked about, if they're favorites of yours.
Send
And
us your recommendations.
yes, that would be really fun. Love to hear what you are watching over this crazy time. And we will come back with 5 more. And that would be a lot of fun. So Ryan, how can people find you?
So on social media, people can find me Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at RyanCam20. Follow me on Letterboxd at RyanCam. And then my YouTube channel, just go to YouTube and search Ryan Cam's Movie Reviews. It'll take you straight there. Channel's growing every day. I just launched a new series on my channel called the AFI Project, where I'll be reviewing every movie on AFI's top 100 movies of all time list. The first episode is up as of this recording. It is for Citizen Kane, what is considered to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest movie of all time. So definitely not intimidating at all. But reviews for The Godfather and Casablanca will be coming this week, as well as the Twilight Zone vlogs, which is a running series where I review one episode of the Twilight Zone. That'll be continuing as well, because with no new releases, I gotta fill in the time somehow.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. That'll be great. I'll definitely check out that Citizen Kane one. It'll be good. So yeah, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Make sure to check that out and check out the Hallmarkies podcast for lots of fun content that we're doing during this time. So thanks so much, you guys, and we'll talk again hopefully next week. Bye, everyone.